Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Expat Conversations with your host, Michael Nolen. I want to say thank you very much for tuning in today. Once again, I want to thank Dr. Marco Antonio Cortez Gradado, who is the rector of the University of Guadalajara and is in charge of the Department of Innovation, Education, and Governance. And he is the one that allows us to have this outreach for the expat community here in the country of Mexico. I also want to say thank you very much to the folks here at the Monte Carlo Hotel that are allowing us to film our video shows here, and we're very appreciative of all their hospitality. Today I've got a very special guest, Karen Hertwich.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Karen and her husband came down here from Canada quite a few years ago. 1992. And they started a company at that time called S&S Auto. Is that the name that you gave it to?
Yes.
At the very beginning?
Yes.
And they're located right in the western part of Chapala. Am I correct?
Yes. In Ribera's del
In Ribera's.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's surrounded by a bazaar on one side and an OXXO down the street, and there's Will Travel right next to him. He was on my show a while back in his charitable organization. But again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
We've got a lot to talk about. As I mentioned, their company is S&S Auto. And would you first give a little history of S&S Auto, kind of how it got started and everything, if you don't mind?
No, not at all. So like I said, we came in 92. We did a few things before we started S&S Auto, but my husband, very much into cars. We say he's got cars running through his blood.
He's got a beautiful El Camino over there right now.
He does.
I saw.
Yeah, he does. We've had a few classics over the years. So he just started helping people buy cars. And then the next thing you know, we are opening in an office and dealing with the dealerships in Guadalajara and brokering for them and creating relationships with all the dealerships in Guadalajara and selling new cars.
Is that new and used or just mainly new?
And then also selling used cars. But I would say over the years, the majority have been new cars.
Okay.
And that's because they come with a warranty, and you got to be careful with used cars.
Well, that's one question I want to ask you. When I came down here in 2014, I was moving from the States. I knew I was going to be moving permanently, so I bought a brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee Summit in Houston, brought it down here, and I was living in Puerto Vallarta for the time. And I thought everything was great until I got my permanent residency.
Right.
And I was able to do it very fast because I'm married to a Mexican citizen. So, is it better for expats that are coming down here to bring their own car, or should you buy one down here in Mexico? Can you kind of handle that? Because I hear that question all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's very individual. It depends on the person and how much time you're spending here.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only coming for a few months, you know what? Drive your car down. Just easier, and you have to have certain documents to register a vehicle here. So I think if you're anywhere, if you're here 3 months of the year or less, don't even consider, because the car's going to sit while you're not here, and that's not good for a car. Much like a woman or a lady, they want attention.
She has to be
so
wine and dine.
do not leave them in the garage by themselves, and then you're going to come back, and it's always going to need to have work done. So it's really for people who 6 months of the year or full time. Then really there are great advantages to having a Mexican plated vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
You can lend it to your friends, you can go anywhere you want with it. You're not restricted like you are with a Permanente and not having it. Whereas if you bring a vehicle down from the US and Canada, you're not going to be able to lend that to your family and friends when they come to visit. The other thing is warranty issues. A lot of warranties in the U.S. and Canada for new cars will not apply here in Mexico.
Exactly.
So,
I brought this brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
I got down here early January of 2015. It was a 2014 model. And when I came across the border, You have to go through immigration customs if they're awake.
Yes.
If they're not, you just drive right on by. But you have to stop at about 20, 30, 40 kilometers into the country.
Yeah, they won't stop you.
And register everything.
That's right.
And I think it's like $800 or $900 that you have to pay.
I don't know how much it is.
I think it was
But
$800.
you got to give a credit card, and you have to go through a process.
You have to show the title and have to all this.
That's right.
And then you're permitted for, like, I'm guessing, 90 days or 160 days, something like that. And if you return it back, there's no problem at all. If you don't return back to the States and stop and give them the paper, you lose your deposit, let's say. That's what I did.
And you would not be able to bring another vehicle into the country because they'll show on the computer, you've got a car here.
So you do have to stop and you have to do all the paperwork. And then if you leave, if you're a snowbird and you go back to the States or Canada, then you're going to have to stop. And you do get your money back, your deposit. I don't know if it's all of it because I came down. So that's very important for you to know if you're going to be driving down. But what about tags in that? If you're just coming down for 6 months or 4 months, like my neighbors do, they're from Canada, and they drive down about, I don't know, September, October, and they stay till March, and they drive their car back and forth to Edmonton every year.
Right.
It's a damn good car, I guarantee you. That's a long trip, and they've done it for years. But they do it every year, and they don't change their plates. They have their Edmonton plates on it, and I don't think they ever get in any trouble.
So they probably maintain their registration and their insurance while they're away.
Okay.
I know in Canada, you don't want to let your insurance go because then to reactivate it can be difficult. So you do want to maintain those things. And then that becomes an
So you don't have to
inconvenience.
replate the car. You don't have to go down. Let me ask you another question, a little bit off cars, but when you come down temporarily, now this is educational, I know the answer, but you don't have to get a new license, a Mexican driver's license, or you don't have to have an international license if you're a snowbird or temporary, correct?
No, you don't, but it is kind of a gray area. Much like if you lived in Texas and moved to Arizona, you're supposed to have an Arizona driver's license and Arizona plates. If you are here in Mexico and you are a resident of Mexico, and you own a Mexican plated vehicle, you must have a Jalisco or a Mexican driver's license. If you're bringing a vehicle down from Edmonton, it doesn't matter. As long as you have an Alberta, because Edmonton is Alberta, you have an Alberta driver's license, that's all you need, because it'll match your license plate. So you always want to make sure things are matching. And same bringing a car, a Mexican plated vehicle back to the US or Canada, if it's Jalisco plated, you have to have a Jalisco driver's license, and that's very important.
I had a good friend that had a car in Canada and had a car in Puerto Vallarta that he just kept, and he'd fly back and forth and use his cars. Then he decided to drive his Canadian car down. During the pandemic, he couldn't get it across.
Yeah.
So after about 3 or 4 weeks of trying to do it every way he could, he had a tow truck say the car was broken, they were going to haul it to the United States to have it repaired. He rode in the tow truck with the drivers.
Wow.
It went across the border to where he had tried twice or 3 days before. They wouldn't let him across. It went across the border, they unloaded it, and he drove it down to Mexico.
Come on, so he drove it over the border from Canada into
the
US?
tow truck drove it.
Wow, well, yeah. Wow.
And then once it got to the United States, it was all during the pandemic. A lot of things are different there.
Things were wonky.
Let me ask you a question. If you're a snowbird and you come down here, we mentioned, you should just bring your car down if you want.
Yeah.
But if you're coming down and you know you're going to be more of a permanent, should you buy a car down here? It's just a lot easier, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Sell your car in Canada or sell your car in the States.
Yes.
And then come down here, and that's where you can help them out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't think there's as many cars listed by Craigslist or Facebook or all these other things down here as there are in the States.
Probably right.
And you really don't know what you're getting from who. It might have been a Canadian couple that came down here 2 years ago and brought their car and never plated it, and the maintenance hadn't been kept up because the warranties aren't good. I know when I brought my Jeep down, although it was a brand new vehicle, I went to the Jeep dealership to have a 6-month service, and they said, well, we don't honor the 6-month service warranty because it's an American car in a Mexican country.
Right. So that would come into play.
And so it come into play. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Okay, yeah, so there's that. You know, if you're bringing a new car down, check with the manufacturer if it's covered under insurance, under the warranty. If you have a tourist visa or a temporary resident visa, you can bring a vehicle into Mexico. If your Mexican visa is permanente, you cannot bring in a vehicle. The advantages really are great. Again, it depends on how long you're staying. If you're only here for a few months, then bring your car down. If you plan on coming back annually for a long time, it's good to have a vehicle here. You can sell it here. You can get, the warranty will be existing. There's many perks. You can lend the car to somebody. You cannot sell your Canadian or US plated vehicle in Mexico because there's no jurisdiction to transfer the ownership. Even though you sign the back of the title and give the car away, it's still your responsibility. When you cross the border, you got a permit, a temporary importation permit, they call it a TIP, and it basically even says that you're not allowed to sell that vehicle here in this country. If somebody else is driving a US or a Canadian plated vehicle in Mexico, it really does become contraband. Like, John Smith has to drive John Smith's red car if it's a US or a Canadian plated. If it's Mexican plated, it really doesn't matter. Anybody can drive that vehicle. So that to me is huge right there. When you mention Craigslist and buying used versus new, here we have terrible roads, topes. Not all of them are bad, but people fly over the cobblestones, and typically we would do repairs 30% quicker here than we would back home.
Shocks,
brakes, everything.
Struts,
suspension, you bet.
Suspension. Yeah, that's the business being tires.
Yeah, so you don't know when you're buying a vehicle, and here we don't have Carfax. So if the vehicle has ever been salvaged, or there's no way of getting online, plugging in the VIN number and saying, has this car ever been in an accident? You caveat emptor, you have to check the vehicle. So and paperwork is very different than what we're used to back home. Lost documents, very hard to replace. It's a huge process. If you don't speak the language, it makes it that much more difficult. So I am a believer in buying a new car here because of the warranty, and you know what you're getting. Mind you, we do get a lot of good cars in for used vehicles that have been sold brand new, and we know the car, and we've been taking care of it for them. We love those cars.
Well, I want you to explain this, expand on it. When I brought my car down, I was fine for the 2 years until I got my permanent residence.
Correct.
But it was a 2-year-old car. And once you get a permanent residence, now correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot have a United States or Canadian car that's newer than 8 or 9 years?
Any year.
Any years.
Any year, doesn't matter.
I was told that once a car is 9 years old, you can bring it down. But I returned my car to Texas,
right,
where I bought it and sold it to them.
Okay.
Came down here and bought 2 cars.
Okay.
2 used cars off of Facebook or Craigslist or somebody like that, or people I knew. But I had those 2 cars and everything was fine. They were Jalisco or Nayarit state of, plated, and everything was great. And the car I bought since then was a Mexican plate. Now I have a Mexican driver's license.
Right.
But I was told, and I just want the audience to understand, and if you would clarify that is the rule, that you cannot bring a car
with a permanent visa.
With a permanent visa, you have to return it.
Your visa, your resident status is permanent. You cannot bring a car in. Importing vehicles, as I understand, the rules change all the time. You mentioned 8, 9 years old or older, but this changes all the time. So I can't say. What I say today is going to be different next month. But I know it's costly. I know it has to be done through customs at the border to be done legally. There's a lot of what we call chocolates here, where people have paid a lawyer to get some plates and everything's done incorrectly, and those vehicles are not legal. So that's something you got to be very careful with. You have to deal with somebody who is reputable. Jamie Littlejohn, she imports vehicles. I have always seen good paperwork coming out of her office.
Now, is she a local here?
Yeah, she is, absolutely.
She sounds Indian.
No.
Her name Littlejohn.
You can actually reach her through email, if I could say.
Sure, please.
Legalizecars@gmail.com. and she will, that's what she does, but she does it legally. And I understand it's costly. It's not her fault. It's the duties, and she'll be able to tell you if your car meets the requirements. If you are importing a vehicle, it has to be manufactured in North America, Canada, Mexico, or the U.S. And that's implied by the first digit of the VIN number. It would start with a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
That's the month.
No, it's the that implies where it's been built, manufactured.
Oh, okay.
So you can't import a vehicle that's imported like from the U.S. that was manufactured in Japan. It will not pass. It's not a legal vehicle to be imported. You can bring it in and drive it under a tip, but that's it. You cannot permanently. Your Jeep was manufactured in the U.S. and that's I'm sure, but you didn't import it, so it doesn't matter.
No,
But if it was, you possibly could have imported it.
I wanted the Jaguar that was sitting next to it, but I couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
But so I took the Jeep. You mentioned warranty issues. I do want to expand on that. My warranty, even though it was a 2-year car, it had a 3-year warranty on the car and 5-year or 10-year on the motor transmission, all that, and the drivetrain. I've had 50 cars since I turned 16. I've never had a drivetrain problem. All it is a shaft that spins. I don't know how it could break, but I guess it could. It could burn up in a fire or something or melt. So that's the warranty issue. We've talked a little bit about new versus used. And one thing that's neat about S&S is you all have used cars on the lots that people were down here, maybe they wanted something else. A spouse passed away or somebody gave them a car. I know a man that had a car down here, and then he went to Canada and never returned, and the car's still here. And the lady that has it's been keeping it for him, has no idea what to do with it.
Yes.
But you all get some really nice quality used cars.
We do.
If I come into you all and I want to buy a used car, or if I want to buy it from Joe on Facebook, should I take that car and take it to a mechanic and have them check it out?
Absolutely.
And do you all have a mechanic that when you buy a car from an individual, you're a dealership,
yes,
more or less, so you would do things right.
Yes.
But some individuals might not. Oh, there's nothing wrong with his car. It's like new, and you get to you open up the hood and one of the carburetors is missing,
Well,
or the muffler's off,
we
or
get that all the
catalytic
time.
converter, the catalytic.
Absolutely, we get that all the time.
Catalytic.
Catalytic.
It's not a catalytic.
Catalytic.
I had a Japanese eye doctor one time, and he told me he had a really expensive American car called a cataract. Believe that?
No,
So,
I do believe it if you're saying
it's a cataract. So it is important to have it taken to mechanics.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you all do that as a service?
Yes,
If I
we
brought my
can.
car in and said, I'm going to buy this maybe from Joe, would you all have your mechanic?
Absolutely.
Or there are other mechanics here Lakeside that do that?
Yes, absolutely. We can facilitate in that. Just as important as the mechanics of the vehicle is the paperwork.
Okay.
Paperwork here in Mexico is very different. There's invoices they call facturas, and sometimes there's just one, and there could be 5, 6, 7, 8 facturas. And you, or a foreigner, typically wouldn't understand how that works. So just as important is the paperwork. If you buy a vehicle and give somebody the money and there's a document missing, it's going to be a nightmare to fix that. So we facilitate in paperwork as well as having the vehicles inspected. People who drive their vehicles used and then they sell them, typically they don't go and spend money on the tires and the suspension. They're not going to do all that. They're going to sell it first and let the new people buy it. So, you know, as long as the transmission and the motor and the drivetrain is all in good working order, if you got to change shocks, you got to change shocks. Not a big
What's
deal.
a fair price to have a mechanic look at it? I'm sure he's going to spend 15, 20 minutes looking at this, that, and the other work, whatever, 30 minutes.
To inspect the vehicle?
500 pesos or
Yeah,
10,000 pesos or
600 pesos, not very
500,
it's not-
just 50,
yeah.
25, 50 bucks.
May depend on the vehicle. Some are
Yeah.
a little bit harder to get access to certain things, so he may charge a little bit more, but yeah, somewhere around the 500.
Well, if you bring a 57 Chevy in there and you pop the hood and there's a real nice 427 engine in there and it's, you know, got double carburetors and there's lots of room in there, you could probably play a hockey or something in there. You know, that's nice. Or you bring a 2022 some other car and it's just a big old computer in there.
Yeah.
You open up the hood and there's
Yes.
I have a friend, his wife thinks it's just a big on-off switch in there. You say, oh, the card ring, she thinks just flip the switch like a light. But some of them are very, very complicated.
They are. They can be,
and
yes.
a lot of these dealers down here probably don't have because they're very, very expensive to buy the equipment to figure out, analyze what these diagnostics. I know they have little machines that they can hook into the computer system and it reads a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But those cost a lot of money.
They do.
And some of these quote-unquote shade tree mechanics might not be as reputable as you'd want them to be.
Yes, and to keep up with those things, because as the cars change every year more and more, like anything with computers, they are changing. So they have to keep up and upgrading their diagnostic equipment and make sure, of course, they can plug into the newer vehicles. So that will come into play. The mechanic that I deal with, he does have the diagnostics equipment.
Let me ask you a question. I've been told by several people that if you buy a 2023 Ford Mustang GT 500 convertible in Houston, that it might cost you $65,000. If you buy that exact same vehicle from a Ford dealership here, it might be $85,000.
It could be.
I've always been told that new cars are much more expensive if you buy them here than it is in the United States.
I think that
for a comparable car. Is that true or not?
Right now it is, because the dollar's weak. So, 2 years ago when it was 22, you were getting the vehicles were typically cheaper here because of what the dollar was at.
Okay.
And you always have to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Here, when in Mexico, the manufacturers, they set the prices. There's no negotiation. So if they say that Honda CR-V is starting at $629,900, that's what the price is.
They don't dicker and deal.
They do not.
No matter how much you kick the tires.
And those prices include sales tax, shipping,
no
everything.
hidden fees.
No hidden fees, except for plates and registration. It's 5,000 basically.
Well, that's a whole new ballgame, getting your car registered and all that.
So with that to me, you always have to compare apples to apples. When you go online back home and check pricing, they don't include the sales tax, they don't include the shipping. But the biggest influence for that question would be the rate of exchange.
Okay.
Because it's terrible.
How do you pay for a car? Say I'm a Canadian or I'm an American, and I come down here and I want to, I left my car in
Good question.
Yahoo, Idaho. I come down here. Do I transfer money out of my 401k or my savings from Idaho down to my bank in Mexico, or do I take a loan out here? What are the interest rates?
Yeah.
Can you answer that? Because a lot of people wonder, okay, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to buy a car, but how am I going to pay for it? Should I take a big wad of cash? Should I have it wire transferred?
You can't. That's hard to do. So the best thing to do, really, when you get here, is open an account, honestly, and have your money sent down.
Okay.
You're going to get a better rate of exchange, typically, if you're dealing with your own bank institution. What I suggest to people who are coming down here permanently or even for a lengthy amount of time is make sure somebody can sign on your account back home. You're with Charles Schwab, you need money, you're going to wire it down to your account. Banks are changing. It's not so easy anymore that you can do that unless you do online banking. So I always recommend that you have someone back home that can sign on the account. So if you send the money down, $30,000, $20,000, depending on your budget, and it sits in the bank here, when you find the car that you want, you're ready to just do an electronic transfer to the dealership, or in the case of a used car, to the seller. It really depends on what you're buying. On new cars, you can also pay with a credit card, but they're going to charge you about 3% over and above. And that's not
if you're buying a X-Series Jaguar,
it's a lot of money.
That's $150,000.
And it's not the dealerships that do that, it's really the banks that they're using the card. We have clients that have done it over the years, and they said they get a really great rate of exchange using their credit card, and they get the travel miles and points, and it's for them, it works. But not everybody has the same dynamics on their credit card.
And your credit limit has to be pretty high.
It does, but we've done it many times, and it's an advantage, but it's all up to your personal banking. And the other one was finance. But finance here, you're looking at probably 12 to 16%.
Very high from what I understand.
Unless you're getting some sort of promotion. Right now, Ford, 12 months, no interest. So there are on certain models. So there are disadvantages. And as a foreigner, you would need a Mexican cosigner.
So you mentioned that there's no deals. I mean, it's like
on new cars.
You go to Bill and John's Chevrolet in Phoenix, Colorado, and you know they're giving you an automatic $4,000 down on your trade, and we're going to knock this off and knock that off, and you kick this tire off, and your car goes from $75,000 down to $62,000.
Correct.
There's not the dickering and dealing that you can. Or they have 500 F-150s on the lot that they all of a sudden got from Dearborn, Michigan because the pandemic's been over.
Right. No,
there's not that dickering deal. The
and
price is the price.
They're not allowed to undercut each other. They will get fined, and if they continue to do it, they could lose their.
So it doesn't matter if you go to Joe's, Bill's, John's, Juan's, Jose's, Jose's.
S&S Auto.
It's all the same. S&S. Let me ask you another question. If I want to buy a new car, is it easier for me to go running up and down the streets of Guadalajara, fighting the worst traffic in Mexico, or just going to you and say, Karen, I want a 2024 Chevelle SS 454 convertible, and then here's my $40,000 down. You find me that car when Chevrolet builds it next year, and you deliver it to me. Or I want a Honda CR-V, 2003 new. Here's my deposit to you. Can you get the car over the weekend, or because of the pandemic, you have to wait 4 months? I've heard people waiting 4 or 6 months to get the particular color. But there's a lot of car lots in Guadalajara when I drive over there, and there's a lot of cars sitting there.
Yes,
they don't want them to sit there because it's costing them money.
No,
so you can't go to a dealership and just say, here's 50 grand, give me that car, and then drive it off.
So unlike 3 years ago, for example, you'd come in and say, I want a Honda CR-V. I would call the dealership and I'd say, what do you have? Well, they have 3 different versions, and in each version we've got this color, those colors. We got every color in the gamut. What do you want? And it would take a week or two, right? Get plates registered and away you go. Now, when I call and say, do you have any CR-Vs? They may or may not. If they don't, like I checked just yesterday on that, they had one available.
But if you're not real picky, you don't care about the color, you don't care the packages and all that.
That's true, but my point is they only had one, right? And it was the top version. And so if you don't want to spend that money, you just want to get the entry version, well, then we get a deposit, we put you on a list. And you get in the queue without a deposit, they're not going to call you. Cars are kind of trickling in now.
Yeah, I think so.
I get inventories, like it was exciting because they had, they had a CR-V and they had HRVs. Kia at the Sportage, they had a few available. But those cars typically go very quickly because there is a lack of inventory. As
of today, maybe in a year or two later.
And we've been hearing for over a year, it'll get better, it'll get better. It is getting better, but it fibrillates. It's a really weird market now. It's, this month we may have some of these Kias available. Next month we may have Nissans available. It changes all the time.
BMWs are short nosed because there was a container ship about 4 months ago that went down in the Pacific. It might have been the Atlantic. It was coming from Germany. And they had like 3,000 brand new BMWs on it, and the ship sunk.
Oh my goodness. Oh, terrible.
Now you're back in the queue again for another year.
I hear all kinds of stories. I don't know what is holding things up. I heard the chip was a problem, and I believe the chip is a problem. I see it with all kinds of things, not just cars. It could be, dishwashers or computers.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not buying that so much anymore. I think there's a lot of other things like logistics. There are containers sitting out in the Pacific waiting to be cleared. We were delivering a Mazda not too long ago. The vehicle was in Mexico. It was only 6 hours away at the port. And it still took a month, almost a month, to get it to Guadalajara because of logistics. So we're seeing it's just different. And we're not really sure what the holds up. It's a gamut of a whole bunch of things.
No, sure, it's like anything.
Right, and it's not just cars, it's everything, right?
Let me ask you a question that's maybe you can help us with, maybe not. Jalisco, the state of, passed a law a while back, I think. I don't know all the details because I've never found anybody that can answer it. That you have to have a special emissions test, and that would be on new cars. I mean, a new car would come with an emission
A new
test
car
done
is
by the
exempt.
dealer, maybe.
It's exempt.
But a used car, 2, 3, 4 years. Say I buy it from you, or I buy it from somebody else. Do I personally have to go somewhere like a safety inspection? Almost every state in the United States, you go to the Texaco, or you go to the Shell, the Chevron, or the Hibden tires, and they have inspection stations.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people here asking me that question, and I'm asking you because you're the expert. I have a 2012 Honda CR-V. It's never been inspected, but it is licensed in Jalisco. What do I need to do? Can you answer that to all my listeners?
Yes, absolutely.
Please.
The inspection, there's probably 5-6 inspection centers within the Guadalajara vicinity, from Ocatlan, which is just outside Guadalajara, to Guad. It's based on the last digit of your license plate.
Okay.
So 1 would be January, 2 is February, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it is required to be, it's all done by appointment, and it has to be done at those places. There are inspection centers. You cannot go to the dealership or just...
How do you find those places? Do you know
you
them?
get
Do you
online.
have a list?
It's a whole process done online. It's verificación responsable. And you first go online to register the vehicle and get a format for payment. Then you go pay. Then you can go back in and make the appointment. What we're told is this area here, Chapala, does not have it's not required to do the emissions inspection. I think it's because they're so far away. If they had an inspection center here, they would enforce it. The problem with that is if you are driving through Guadalajara, they have random checkpoints.
Oh yeah, I've seen them over there.
So they're going to see you don't have a sticker on your window. They're going to call you over, and you have to argue with them and say, well, I'm from Chapala. Here's my, I'm registered in Chapala, so I'm not required to do it. Quite honestly, for the difference in money, get it done. You've got the sticker on your window.
What does it cost? Do you know?
The actual fee for the state is 500 pesos if you're in time, or 550 if you're not. We provide the service, so we have a driver that takes the vehicle to Guadalajara. I go into the license bureau. I make sure the payment's done, so obviously we charge more.
So the best thing to do is take your car. If you're a Lakesider, take it over to Karen at S&S. Say, here's my car. You'll have it back to me in 2 days, whatever.
Not even 1 day. Once we've done the appointment.
Yeah, but when you get
but
halfway.
It's really, you drop it off in the morning, it's back by 1 o'clock.
You get halfway to the airport, Castatories has their 6,000 trucks there, and there's no turnarounds, there's no overviews, nothing. It might take you an hour to get to the airport.
That's very true.
12 miles away.
That's very true.
The traffic over there is getting worse and worse.
Yes, it is. And if they have any sort of...
the traffic's so bad there, nobody drives over there anymore.
Well...
Can you believe that?
I love Guadalajara. It's a great city. It's got so much to offer. It's easy to drive in Guad.
We've talked about a lot of things, and I'm sure everybody's just kind of snowballed by it, which is good. That's what this programs do, to help people and educate them. What haven't I asked you that you know is real important that people need to know?
I think we did touch on pretty much everything. The world is wonky, lack of cars, be buyer beware on buying used cars. There's a lot of people who are in it just for the money and that's it. So you want to be careful with that, I think. Emissions we touched base on. Importing a vehicle, that is a customs issue. It's going to change all the time. Mm-hmm. Selling your vehicle. It's pretty easy here if you've been taking care of it. I think there are vehicles that handle the roads better here. I find the Japanese vehicles, the Nissans, the Mazdas, the Hondas, they really do seem to hold up.
Have a better undercarriage,
they
better
really
shocks,
are better.
touch.
They just hold up better. We sell them all, from Chevrolet, Toyota, Nissan, BMW, Mercedes. We sell them all. And everybody is different, so economics is going to come into play. Honda makes a really good car, but they are more expensive. But they hold their value.
You pay for what you get.
You pay for what you get. But I know from my personal experience for resale and then how they handle the roads. You know, the Japanese cars do build a good car. Korean vehicles, Kia, Hyundai, they've come a long way. Absolutely, they've come a long way. They have better warranties. While under warranty on any new vehicle here, the vehicles must be serviced at the dealerships. You cannot go to your local mechanic, and that's not going to fly. And I think it's because we don't have the same qualification as they do with Class A mechanics back home.
Well, I think a lot of cars that are standard tooling in the United States are metric down here.
Yes.
Let me ask you another question. This is kind of my own information. I know in the United States you cannot buy a Chinese vehicle, but China is making some probably pretty good quality cars from what I hear. And I've seen some dealers in Guadalajara that I don't know what they're selling.
Cheery.
But it is a Chinese vehicle, and some of them are very high priced and some of them are very inexpensive. And then I just got back from Japan, and everything over there looks like a box. It looks like a cracker box. Yeah. They got little tiny wheels on them, but they're everywhere in Japan. I don't see them being imported at all. No. If I wanted a very special car, like a Bentley Continental, and I want to import it, can you help me out with that? Or you would go to Jamie Littlejohn. Okay. Absolutely, and see what she has. But you mentioned the Chinese cars. The cheap Chinese cars are supposed to be pretty decent.
Well, there's a new Chery, Chirrney or something like that. We don't have a lot of experience. They're new to the market. So for me, it would be, let's see how they handle the roads, how it is getting parts. We didn't talk about getting parts, like insurance claims. You're in an accident. Typically years ago, 1, 2 months, 3 months would be a long time to get your car fixed and back. Now we're seeing 4, 5, 6 months. Because they're not getting the parts.
They don't have the secondary parts.
And, they don't stockhold all the parts. Obviously, they do for service and, filters and belts and things like that. But they're not going to keep an inventory of every part of every car. So it's holding things up, again, the logistics of getting these things here. So I'm not sure how that vehicle is going to, handle the roads, and will it be that easy to get parts?
Yeah, that's true.
So I personally would be careful with that. I like to deal with companies that have been around, have a reputation, and I'm not going to start experimenting, especially with our clients, right?
We've covered a lot of stuff, and I want to say thank you very much. I know there's other questions that people have that we didn't talk about, or it's something specific. There's a notion called the Pacific, and there's specific.
Yes, that's right. They're different.
And my English teacher, she didn't really like me, so she didn't teach me very much. Give out your contact information again. I told everybody you're with S&S Auto. It's on the west side of Hahihi. It's east side of Hahihi, west side of Chapala on the main road. I don't know the name of it, but there's only one road.
There is.
Because there's mountains on that side, and there's a big lake on this side. Do you have a web page, which I know she does? Do you have a phone number? How can people contact you to ask the questions that we didn't answer, that they need more information, more detail?
Okay.
And they want to buy this new car, they want to come by your lot and see what you have.
Or they have questions.
Have questions, and you can answer them.
Yes.
Can you please give out your detailed information so they can contact you?
Yes. I would go with our email address. That is the best way to communicate with us. SS, like Sandra, Auto, AUTO, at Laguna, LAGUNA.com.mx. We're constantly checking our emails. Sometimes they do slip through the cracks, but if you email, then we'll respond. Any questions? I do work by appointment. It's much better for the client, so you can get my undivided attention. And our goal really is to educate the customer.
Well, you're educating. You spent an hour here helping us, but we're hitting the tip of the iceberg, because there's people that have thousands of questions that I can't even think about.
There's a lot more.
And they will be. I hope contact her. You know, I would walk around one day when my wife was at the bazaar next door. I was bored. I walked onto her lot, and I thought this would be a great person to have on my show to educate all of us dummies like me that don't know anything. And not calling you all dummies. Well, if you're my brother and you're watching, you're a big dummy. But anyway, there's a lot of us that are just uneducated because we're not buying a new car or a used car every day.
And it is different here.
It's very different in Mexico than it is going over to Billy Bob's, Thornton's, Chevrolet in Arkansas.
That's right.
So thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
Contact her. She can answer
Please do.
any question that you can come up with. And if she can't, she has people that can.
That's right. We have a bilingual staff, so.
Because she's been doing this for a couple of days.
Yeah.
How many years?
20, 25 years. Yeah, a long time.
She doesn't know it by now.
Long
She can
time,
learn
I
it.
don't know.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I
Thank you
really
very
appreciate
much.
your time and helping the expats learn a little bit more. And then
Absolutely.
if you're Mexican, if you're from New Zealand and you need help with a car, don't hesitate to contact her and she'll be glad to help you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to this conversation with Michael Nolen, Expat Conversation, and appreciate it. Tell your friends about it, pass it on, put it on your Facebook account, and the link's going to be below, or maybe up here. I don't know where they're going to put it, maybe on the side. But wherever you're going to have a link there, you can pass that on to your Facebook page or whatever, have them watch it on YouTube, and they can be educated and learn a lot more. And then if you don't learn your answer to your question, contact this young lady here. She can do it for you. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next episode of Expat Conversations with Michael Nolen. Thank you.
Happy trails to you until